Well, hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. I doubt my guest today needs much of an introduction. Founding member and original drummer, and actually the member with the longest tenure in the band, the legendary Yardbirds, Jim McCarty. After the Yardbirds, Jim and fellow ex-Yardbird Keith Relf formed the band Renaissance. Over the years, Jim has also played in the bands Together, Shoot, Illusion, Box of Frogs, and the British Invasion All-Stars, to name just a few. Mr. McCarty also has several solo albums to his credit, and along with Dave Thompson, has co-authored two books, 1983's She Walks in Beauty, My Quest for the Bigger Picture, and 2018's autobiography, Nobody Told Me, My Life with the Yardbirds, Renaissance, and Other Stories. In 1992, the Yardbirds were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not long after, Jim and Chris Dreja formed a new Yardbirds band, playing a lot of the old classics as well as new material. Through various lineup changes, the band has survived, with Jim again being the last original member. My guest today is one of the survivors, having led a long, varied, and colorful career in music. Well, welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Greg. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. You said it all.
That's the shortest interview, right? All right, we're done. We're done. Yeah, I've had a couple of others do the same thing. Well, you covered it all, so. Oh, well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Liverpool, and I didn't really live in Liverpool because my father lived down south. He lived quite near to London, and my mother was originally from Liverpool, and they met during the war.
Yeah.
So we gravitated down to London to where my father was, and so we lived in quite near to London, southwest London, and that's where I sort of grew up.
Okay. Well, you guys were safe during the war, right? You didn't have any.
Yes, but it's very interesting because a lot of the area where we live got bombed. So I wasn't really aware of any bombs myself, but where we used to play as kids, it was all bomb sites.
Yeah.
You know, the whole blocks had been not been knocked down, so it was all like all overgrown bushes and fields and things, and bits of old bombs around, you know. But it was fun. I mean, it was fun. There was a lot of open space, but it was a bomb site.
Yeah, I've heard that before. A couple of people I talked to, playing in bombed out buildings and that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what a way to grow up, right?
But it was. I remember down the end of my block. I heard the story one day. There was an old pub on the next block, and I never knew the pub, but somebody told me, oh, this pub was very popular, and it got bombed one night, and it was full up. It was a Saturday night, and bomb right on top of it, and sort of wiped up everybody, you know. I used to go with my friends, and we used to go and play downstairs, like in the cellar, because sort of jumped down underneath. You know, that was all that was left. It was an old, just the bottom, you know, the old cellar and the place where they kept all the beer and everything. You know,
right.
All that was left.
Yeah, I like to hear stories like that. Well, what about after the war? I guess you have any early memories of hearing music being played in the house?
Well, my parents weren't very musical, but they listened to a lot of radio. You know, we had a lot of BBC radio in those days, and you know, the radio that we used to hear growing up was very, you know, very straight, lots of sort of ballads, and we get the occasional Elvis song or, you know, Buddy Holly or something, but most of the English music was like very, very straightforward, you know, harmony, you know, close harmony music and all that. And
Yeah.
it was only I was about 16, 17 that suddenly they started to play a bit more rock and roll. You know, the Everly Brothers came in and the Crickets, and that they became popular. And then they started having TV shows,
Yeah.
which were good, which were rock and roll, you know, TV shows. There was one called Oh Boy and another one called Wham, and they'd have these English people like Billy Fury and Cliff Richard on, and the Shadows, and all
Billy,
those sort of.
yeah, the Shadows. I've heard how influential they were, that band. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shadows. And I was a big fan. You know, me and my schoolmates, we were all big fans of the Shadows.
Yeah.
And I was at school actually with Paul Samuel Smith, who was the bass player in the group in the Yardbirds.
Right.
And we because you know we met when we were about 15 or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I talked to him because he lives in France as well.
Oh, there too. What part of France are you in? I forgot to ask you.
Well, I'm in the south. I'm down towards Nice.
Okay.
About an hour or so from the south coast.
Okay.
So I'm in the hills. He's up in Burgundy, which is in central France, and it's famous for its wine. You know, all the Burgundy wines. But
Right.
he can't drink too much now, unfortunately. Not allowed.
he he ran the stock dry, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a diabetic, so he can't drink too much. You know.
He can't do that. Well, you mentioned a few groups and bands that you were into early on. Do you remember one of the first singles or albums that you got?
Yeah, funnily enough, I used to like skiffle.
Ah, Lonnie Donegan.
Yes, I love Lonnie Donegan. Yeah, Lonnie was great. He was huge in England.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I wanted to buy this record called Freight Train.
Yeah.
You know that song. It was recorded by Chas McDevitt.
Yes.
And Nancy, I think it was Nancy Whiskey, her name. And you used to be able to go into a record store and ask them to play the records, you know, for you.
Right, right.
I was with my mother and I went into this record shop, and she said, "Oh, you know, what do you want to hear?" And I said, "Oh, I want to hear this Freight Train." So the man got it out and he played it, and my mum started laughing. And I said, "You're laughing?" He said, "This is what I love. You know, it's a great record." And she was saying, "Oh, you don't like this, do you? It's terrible." I was so ashamed, you know.
So that's where you started your rebellious streak, right? She's not.
Yeah.
She's not.
They had no idea that our parents had no idea of what we liked, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what about your one of the first live shows that you attended, that you went to? Can you remember?
Well, I went to see the Shadow. I remember going to see the Shadows, and they used to do all that sort of walking together, you know.
Yes, yes. Synchronized, yeah, kind of,
synchronized, yeah, with their suits on. I was very impressed. I went to see Joe Brown at one time.
Oh, and the brothers, Yeah.
brother. Yeah, I was very impressed because he played some Chuck Berry, you know,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh, he's good. He's sort of he's crossing over. He's playing a bit of R&B. We called it R&B in those days.
Right. Right.
And he was great. You know, I thought, oh, this guy's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I like the early Joe Brown. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Another record I had, because I used to have, you know, buy the 78s and put them
yeah.
on a record player. And another record I had was Humphrey Littleton, Bad Penny Blues.
Oh, okay.
You heard of Humphrey Littleton?
Yes. Yes.
He's a jazz trumpet player.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
And on our first ever flight as the Yardbirds, we went to play this festival up in Scotland, up in Aberdeen or somewhere. And we got the flight from London. And I sat next to him on the aeroplane. My first ever flight, I sat next to him. And he was so sort of, he had such a thing about him. I was sort of terrified to talk to him, you know.
It's intimidating. Well,
Reading Times newspaper, and he's very serious.
did you know it was him when you sat down next to him? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's like well, you better talk to me. We're going to be on this flight for a while. You know.
Well, yeah, he was playing the festival as well.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, very, very good. What was your prior to the Yardbirds? What was the first band that you were a part of?
Well, we had a band at school with Paul Hammersmith. In fact, he played the guitar then. It was before he played bass. He played the like he had a Fender Stratocaster or something.
Oh,
And we had a little group at school. We used to do like Johnny Cash and Gene Vincent,
was
Buddy
that
Holly, Crickets.
was that
and
the
stuff.
country? Was that the Country Gentleman?
Yeah, that's right. The
All right.
country.
Right. All right.
One of the guys had a Gretsch guitar that was called the Country Gentleman.
Oh,
So
okay.
we got the name from that, the Country Gentleman.
That's where you guys. You would play country music. You mentioned Johnny Cash. Did you played some other country type
Yeah,
music?
we played Johnny Cash and a range of stuff. Yeah, I think we used to play some Elvis things,
Yeah.
some early Elvis, you know, Mystery Train or something like that. Or yeah. I can't really remember. It was before we heard the blues, the black blues. You know, it was all white music.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, where would you play? Did you play live, Country Gentleman?
Yeah, we used to play in a local pub. Well, I think we had a residency playing in a local pub, and of course all the schoolmates would come, and then we'd play in the school dances. You know, the cliche. You know, playing in the interval.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Did
been
you?
a few films like that, isn't there, about the rock group playing in the interval of the school dance and everyone going mad.
I like hearing those stories as well as some of the musicians from your time period that played at matinees, the theater. They would play, before like the Lone Ranger would come on, where they played like westerns, and they would play there for young kids. I mean, you got to get your start somewhere, right?
Well, they played in the cinema.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Was that in the US or in England?
No, that was in the UK. That was in the UK. Yeah. Yeah. They would play in between the shows, the movies, films, and
Yeah.
with a bunch of riotous, loud kids,
Or throwing ice creams at them.
Right. Yeah.
We never did that. No, we never. But we played in the school dances.
Well, let's move ahead to the formation of the original Yardbirds. Talk about how everyone came together.
Well, that was a little bit later, because by that time we'd left school, and I used to work in the city. I worked in a stockbroker's in London.
Okay.
And I used to commute up to work on the train. And then one day I bumped into Paul Samuel Smith again in a local pub at a weekend, you know. And I said, "Oh, what you're doing now?" And he said he was working for his father, and you know, his father was an electrician, and he worked for him. You know, they went round doing jobs, you know, around the country doing the sort of electrical stuff. And then he said, you must hear this new record I've got. It's somebody called Jimmy Reed.
Yeah.
An album called Live at the Carnegie Hall." So he said, "Come back to my house." So we went back to his house, and he played, you know, he had a very good sound system, and he played it, and it sounded wonderful. And I thought, "Oh, this is great," you know. And then from there we listened to other people like Bo Diddley, and obviously Chuck Berry was a crossover, or, you know, anyway, he was a rock and roller as well. And Bo Diddley and Slim Harper, and of course Howling Wolf.
Oh yeah.
And we had two different bands. He was in a little band called the Metropolis Blues Quartet, and he'd met up with Keith Relf in a local pub.
Okay.
It was this pub in a place called Kingston, near where we used to live, where all the people from the art school used to go, you know, the local art school.
Yeah.
And it was a mixture of art school students and musicians, and I suppose what you call sort of bohemian sort of people.
Arty type. Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And so he had this one band, Paul and Keith. They had a band, and I met with Topham and Chris Dreja.
Okay.
Topham was a guitar player, and we started getting the group together, playing all that sort of stuff, you know, Bo Diddley and
R&B stuff, yeah.
And then the two bands just got together one day, because Paul was playing sort of a country blues type of, Paul and Keith. They were playing like country blues, and they wanted to be a bit more rocky, but like a bit more like the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
So we fused. You know, some people got chucked out along the way, and so we put together the original Yardbirds lineup,
Okay.
which had Topham was on the guitar.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about him. What was his playing style?
Well, he was very dedicated. Very, you know, he loved blues music, and he played very well. And but he was younger than most of us. He was the youngest person in the group, and he was a very good artist. He was at the art school with Keith and Chris, and him and Chris were very close. And his father was an artist, and his father wanted him to be an artist, so he wanted him to study, and he didn't really want him to play in a group, you know. And when we started the group, we were playing in these late night sessions, and so that his father and his mum put pressure on him, you know, said, "Oh, we don't want you playing in a long-haired group."
Long-haired, yeah, that's what they called it. Well,
you know,
well,
you're a great artist.
Go
and we
ahead.
want you. You're a great artist. You know you're potentially a very good artist, and we want you to study. So he left.
Ah, okay. So it wasn't anything, it wasn't the band that was pushing him out. It was his parents that wanted
Yeah,
him to. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, he wasn't in the band very long, was he? Oh,
No, only a few months. He was in the band as it getting it, getting it moving, getting it together. So by the time that we looked at Eric Clapton, the band was sort of quite a name already. So Eric was quite keen to join.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was his reputation before joining the band, Eric?
Well, he wasn't very well known, but he was at the art school as well with the other guys, and yes, he had a sort of a local reputation because he played with a couple of bands before.
Okay.
But, and when you met him, he was obviously, he had a sort of a profile. It made sure he looked the part, and he was dressed well and very dedicated.
So he had already honed his chops a little bit before
Well,
joining.
I'm much more enthusiastic, I think, than Top.
Okay. Okay.
Much more sort of what's the word? Much more driven, really, than Top.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you too. The difference in the style between Topham and Eric.
Yeah, I mean, Eric came to my house and stayed a couple of times. I remember getting up in the morning, and I get up and he'd be sitting in the sitting room, already playing a guitar, playing and working out some solo from some blues record, probably Buddy Guy or somebody,
Yeah.
And so first of all, he used to almost copy them, and then he developed his own style. Yeah. He was very serious about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Very dedicated
Yeah.
From early on. Well,
Yeah.
how did Giorgio Gomelski become your manager?
Well, he used to run this club called the Crawdaddy Club, where the Rolling Stones used to play, and that was in Richmond, near to where we lived. Probably about 10 miles away from where I lived. And they suddenly appeared in this club, one week, and then they started playing regularly, and they were incredibly popular. And Giorgio he lived in London, but he was like he was a bit of a bohemian as well. He was like a continental person, because
Okay.
he was a mixture of nationalities. His mother was French and his father was Russian, and he was brought up in Switzerland or something. So he was sort of quite interesting. And he drank coffee and smoked French cigarettes. But he was larger than life,
Yeah.
And I think Keith and Paul went to see him when they heard about the Stones leaving the club.
Yeah.
The Stones had a hit record, their first hit record. Was that Come On, wasn't it? Come On and I Want to Be Your Man, or whatever. Their first records, and then they didn't want to play in the club anymore. They went off to go on tours, nationwide.
Right. So he began manager and producer, right, Giorgio?
Yeah. So he'd lost the Rolling Stones because Andrew Oldham suddenly appeared and sort of grabbed them, took them away.
A real opportunist.
So he made sure he had us.
Yeah, someone to fall back on.
He managed us got us a record contract and all that, you know.
Well, you guys played a lot of blues, which you mentioned earlier, particularly the Chicago style early on.
Yeah.
Who arranged the tour with Sonny Boy Williamson?
Well, that was to do with Giorgio, because Giorgio used to be involved with the National Jazz Federation in the UK. Him and particularly Chris Barber.
Yeah, right.
And Chris Barber was another trumpeter. And they used to bring sort of black blues singers over to play it in England. They bring up a whole tour. They make up a tour and have half a dozen people like Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf and all sorts of old blues singers all playing together, you know, and they play in some big venues around England. And we used to go and see them. They were great. It was really good.
A lot of those black artists were more appreciated over there in the UK than they were here at home. You know.
Well, I think that was the thing, because they were on a circuit in the US, weren't they?
Yeah.
And it was a blacks only circuit, really. Was it called the Chitlin circuit or something?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, that's right.
So I guess the white kids never saw them. You know, they didn't know who they were.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that was the joke. That was the thing. Because we come over to the US and we play it, that black music, you know, and they think, oh, these guys are great, you know. Where did they get this from?
Yeah.
There was nothing to do with it. We just covered the old blues singers.
Right. Well, you and the Stones really helped broaden, the horizon for a lot of fans here in the U.S., particularly to start listening to that, blues, and R&B and that kind of thing. So you helped bring that to the popular crowds, so that was. We'll talk about you recorded an album with Sonny Boy Williamson as well.
Well, that was Giorgio, because Giorgio was he had some very good ideas about things, and if we were going to play with him, we might as well do a record with him,
Yeah.
The record was a bit strange, because we rehearsed all these songs with him, in an afternoon, and then when we came to do the gig, he started to play different ones.
What kind of guy was he? Did he get along well with the band?
Well, but he was in a different culture. You know what I mean? He was like an old blues.
Right.
He wasn't the real Sonny Boy Williamson. He was a guy called Rice Miller.
Okay.
And Sonny Boy Williamson the second.
Okay.
So I remember, we all got into a huddle one day, and I think it was Keith Relf that said, "Oh, be very careful. Don't say to Sonny Boy, are you the real Sonny Boy? You say that." We don't know what.
Yeah.
He was sort of very serious in one way,
Yeah, I often wondered about that. A black artist playing with a white backing band. How that the chemistry would work in that.
Yeah, it wasn't just a white backing band. It was like a young white band of like suburban kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
Compared to him, who lived in a cabin somewhere, because he used to tell us, I go live in this cabin with Howling Wolf, Chester Burnett.
Yeah.
We eat goats and things, I mean, to us, it sounded really like another world.
Yeah, two cultures, two totally different cultures there. Well,
He was such a great musician and a great showman.
yes, yes,
Even
yes.
though we didn't know what he was doing, he would start to play a song and none of the guys knew the key for a start. What key is he in? It was I was just drumming, but they were all trying to tell each other what key it was in.
Right. Well, whose decision was it? Giorgio's decision to record Graham Goldman's "For Your Love"? Whose decision?
Well, that's a story. I mean, there's so many stories. Stories. We actually got to play with the Beatles because the Beatles used to do a Christmas show, and the year we played with them, they did their Christmas show in a place called Hammersmith, which was in South London, and it was near where we used to play. So we were the local group, more or less, in that area. So I don't know. Giorgio managed to get us on with them, and they were on the show with a lot of other Liverpool bands. I think it was Jerry and the Pacemakers or somebody, and different Liverpool groups, and it was mainly controlled by Brian Epstein, because Brian was a Beatles manager, and he manages other bands, and so that we were the band that was slightly out of place, but when we played, there happened to be a publisher in the audience that had a demo of For Your Love. He'd been sent they used to have funny little demo disc in those days. People used to try and promote their records, and he had it was from Graham, and his manager was a guy called Harvey Lisberg, and they were from Manchester.
Yeah, right.
And somebody said that he was trying to get the Beatles to cover their song, but of course they wouldn't want to do someone else's song. But to keep a long story short, this publisher got the record over to Giorgio, and then we all listened to it, and we thought it was a great song.
Yeah, everyone but Eric.
Everyone but Eric, and we tried a lot of different songs, because that's what you needed all the time. You needed a hit record, and we tried all sorts of other songs that were more bluesy, but they were never really commercial enough, and so we thought, oh, this is this is very commercial, and it's interesting, and it's very moody, and it's got a change of speed in the middle and all that, and it's a great idea. But Eric became sort of a bit disenchanted with the group anyway, and the way we were going, because he wanted to stick to the blues thing, and I mean, do it his way,
Yeah. Well, eventually, things would work out for Eric, with his huge solo success, and with Cream and John Mayall's Blues Breakers. But I guess, like you say, for him it was a good thing, but for you as a band, it wasn't commercial enough. Like you said, if you just get entrenched in the blues like that. So I can see where you guys had to go different ways, at that point.
And it was an opportunity, because it was a very interesting song.
Right. Well,
recording really worked. I thought, it really had a lot of excitement about it.
Yeah. Well, Graham Goldman's a great songwriter, and of course
Yeah.
going on 10cc, but yeah, a lot of his tracks were picked up, by other artists early
Yeah.
on. Great.
Yeah. The Hollies did a couple, didn't they? They did Bus
Yeah.
Stop.
Yes, they did. They did. Well, the story goes, Eric recommended Jimmy Page as his replacement, but Jimmy turned it down initially, right? And recommended Jeff Beck.
Yes. Yeah. Jeff was his sort of understudy.
Okay.
But of course they were friends, which I didn't realize they'd been friends since they were in their early teens. Apparently, I've caught up a lot on the stories, Jimmy's stories, and they knew each other for a long time, and apparently they both built their own guitars at one point, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so he recommended Jeff, and that was quite, in some ways that was quite a shock, because Jeff was like the opposite to Eric. He wasn't concerned with his appearance or anything. He didn't care what he looked like, and he wasn't smart, or he really looked like a ruffian. He had long greasy hair, and he was all dirty, and had all oil, because he used to work on cars. He used to like cars and stuff, and he had all of
cars. He did love cars, yeah. Well,
he could certainly play.
Yeah, well, talk about the influence Jeff brought to the band. He was pretty experimental, wasn't he?
Well, yes, and also it was very good for us, because he wasn't a guy that was going to stick, playing blues stuff all the time. He liked all sorts of stuff. He liked Barney Kessel as guitar player, and he used to like Les Paul a lot, because Les and Mary. Is it Les Paul and Mary Ford? Yeah, they did a lot of those double track, multi-track recordings.
Right.
I think he was one of the first people to do that sort of thing, wasn't he? How High the Moon and all that. Jeff loved it.
He ate that up. Yeah.
And he used to play all sorts of weird, because when I first met him, he had a record player in his car, and he would play all sorts of weird records in his car, But he was very funny, because he always had a very short temper, and the record would jump, and he would bang the temper and bang really bang.
The music world mourned the loss of Jeff last year in January. It's been over a year. Can you believe that?
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's exactly a year. Yeah.
Yeah. It was in January. How did you hear about his passing? Had you been in contact with him over the?
I'd lost touch with him, unfortunately. I seemed to lose touch after he got. He was managed by Harvey. What's his name? Harvey Goldberg. Harvey Goldstein. And I lost touch with him. I don't know what happened, but I think he changed all his contacts or whatever. I used to see him a lot, and I went to his wedding. And then I hadn't seen him for about 20 years, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, it was Harvey Goldsmith. You're right. I just checked that.
Harvey Goldsmith, that's right.
Yeah. Also, you hadn't been in touch with him for quite some time.
No. And it was a big shock, because I knew he was working a lot because when I used to know him, you know, probably 15, 20 years ago, when I knew him better, he never really worked very much. You know, he didn't. He played sort of half a dozen gigs a year,
Okay.
and I think it was Harvey that suddenly got him into playing. Oh, come on, Jeff! You know, you've got to get on the road. It's working,
Yeah.
and that made a huge difference to his career.
He lit a fire under him. Yeah. Got him.
He
Got
really
him.
did. Jeff was just most of the time he was just hanging out, you know, and working on his hot rods and
Right. Right.
having,
Right.
you know,
Uh,
you know, he was such a great guy, and he was such a laugh. Um, even though when we first met him, he really looked like a down and out, you know. But he was actually much cleverer than you thought. He's a very bright guy.
just by outward appearance. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
a couple of my favorite Yardbirds tracks from the Jeff Beck era are "Heart Full of Soul," of course, and maybe my all-time favorite, "Shapes of Things." That's,
Yes.
yeah, and I know that's a fan favorite as well. But
Yes. But yes, he was really I don't know. He had these great ideas, and he wanted to put the all those sounds into the music.
yeah,
And he would play just off the top of his head. You know, he wouldn't work anything out.
yeah,
He'd just play, and you say to Jeff, you know, oh, play a solo. All right, here goes. Brilliant.
he would improvise quite a bit. Yeah, yeah,
He wouldn't have anything worked out, you know, and that was what the band used to do. You know, we did improvise a lot
yeah,
when we played live.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
had sections where we improvised and played off each other and all that.
right. So your live sound was a lot different than the recorded songs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, memories of your first U.S. tour in 1965, was it a bit of a culture shock?
Um, well, yes, it was always our dream to come to America because we were very limited in London. It was sort of very dull and dreary, you know, compared to California or something.
Right.
And we'd seen all the movies and all the TV and TV series, and it was like, coming to paradise or heaven or something, you know, coming to, for us, for young lads, kids.
The grass is always greener, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, we had like the music, you know, the Chicago blues. We had New York, you know, the all that sort of energy, and then California, which was something different, and you know, it was great. It was amazing,
Yeah.
and it was always like our dream to come over.
Well, yeah. I've heard stories of the first time visiting New York and the skyscrapers and just like being in awe of how big these buildings are, you know.
Yeah,
a little a little claustrophobic, you know, kind of like that kind of feeling.
yes, I remember Jeff and I we shared a hotel room, and it was up on the 50th floor or something, and of course he was mad on cars, and he was looking out the window saying, "Oh, look at those cars! You know, those amazing. Look at the American cars all going by."
They look like ants at that height, right?
Right,
Yeah.
little toy cars going by.
Yeah, little toy car. Well, I wanted to hear about this. On that tour, the band recorded a couple of songs with Sam Phillips, at Sun Studios. You're a Better Man Than I, and the train kept a rolling.
Yes.
What was that experience like working with Sam Phillips?
Well, it was another Giorgio idea, because I don't think we'd sort of, I guess from my point of view, I'd sort of heard of Sam, but just that he was the engineer for Elvis or something, I didn't know much about him. And Giorgio fixed it all up because I think we had a lot of time free. Something went wrong with our visas or something. So we only played a couple of dates because our work permits weren't in order, at that time. And so Giorgio would take us on these crazy jaunts, and we go. I think we went to Graceland.
Oh, okay.
I think we tried to get to Graceland and it was closed or something. But he would. It was always very last minute. But he apparently got in touch with Sam Phillips and organised a session, and we arrived at the Sun Studios sort of in the early evening, and Sam wasn't there, so something was wrong. And apparently he was out fishing. He'd gone fishing somewhere, but he got back eventually, and it was probably about 10 or 11 o'clock. So then, so we were all waiting all that time. So we started late, we went on late. And while we were waiting, of course, Keith got a bit drunk because he was hanging around. He had nothing else to do except, have a few drinks in the local bar. And so his performance was pretty bad. And Sam didn't think much of him. Sam said, "Oh, the band's good. The band's good. You're all really good, except for the singer. You'll have to get rid of the singer," he said.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But he was a bit worse for the alcohol.
Yeah, I have heard stories. Well, was it during the recording of the Roger the Engineer album in '66 that Simon Napier Bell replaced Giorgio? Was it? Or after that?
It was before that. It was really before that recording, because we sort of all got together and we said, well, we're all, we've had a few hits, but we're not really making any money. There's no, we're getting so much a week or something stupid, £40 a week or so, I don't remember. And so we said, oh, we need another manager that's gonna bring some revenue in. So in the end, we managed to get rid of Giorgio, and we found I think it was through Paul Samwell-Smith that we found Simon Napier Bell, because he was sort of loosely connected with a TV show called Ready Steady Go.
Right.
And he with one of the directors, a woman called Vicky Wickham, he'd written a song for Dusty Springfield, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, which was basically a translation of an Italian song.
Yeah.
They translated it, but they made a killing with that song. And Paul Samwell-Smith's girlfriend, who later became his wife, used to work on the TV show too. So,
did you guys ever play on Ready Steady Go?
So we used to get on a lot.
Okay.
We had an in, you see.
Right. What were you? Did you mime the song or was it live?
Yeah, good question. I think it was a combination.
Okay.
I think sometimes we played live and sometimes it was mimed.
Okay. But they had a live, they had
we
a live
never,
audience. They had a
yeah, we
live.
never, yeah, we never see them now because they're all all those recordings that apparently they're all owned by Dave Clark. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. From Good Day Clark 5. No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
He owns all the TV recordings of Ready Steady Go,
No, that's interesting. Huh.
and he keeps them very well hidden. You know.
Under lock and key.
Yeah. So we've never seen them.
Well, he has a infatuation with that, I guess. All right. That's very interesting.
I don't really know how that ever happened, but it was quite clever.
Yeah.
Probably worth a lot of money with all those bands.
Sure. I imagine it is. I imagine so. Well, what were the circumstances that led to Jimmy Page joining the band?
You should ask him that one. he tells very well actually, because we were playing at an Oxford May ball, the university, and their May balls have got their reputation, or they're notorious for going on late. They go all through the night.
Yeah.
And we were playing through the night, and we went on, and then you could have, you could drink as much as you wanted, you could have any food, and playing about 2 in the morning, and we went on. Of course, Keith was a bit pissed again.
Yeah.
Basically, the band sort of fell apart a bit because Keith started insulting all the Oxford Doms and everything, and blowing raspberries at them.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh my. All right.
Happened to be in the audience.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jimmy Page thought it was great, and he thought, oh, this band have really got attitude. It's great. It's really good. But it was too much for Paul, and Paul was very upset about it all. And he said, "Oh, well, that's the last time I'm going to play with the group. I'm leaving."
Okay.
Because he'd wanted to be a producer, for a long time, and he was fed up with being on the road, because it was very hard in those days, but playing every night,
Right. And especially if you had a girlfriend, or if you were married or had a family at all, it takes its toll. Yeah.
And there'd be long tours, and you wouldn't have much time off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be like a 6-week tour sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very draining. Yeah. And then you become kind of a family within the band. You see each other so much.
Yes, you have that sort of love-hate going on, like in the family, You're at each other's throats, and then you love each other. It's very weird.
Well, you mentioned that Jeff and Jimmy, were longtime friends. Was there a little bit of rivalry and competition though, when they were both in the band?
Well, when Paul left, we decided to. We'd asked Jimmy already, but we asked Jimmy again. Of course, he was happy to join then, and he was happy to join on the bass, to play, but he didn't mind.
Yeah.
And he played bass on a few gigs, a couple of tours, and then it was silly. We thought, oh, it's silly with Chris playing guitar, because he was just a rhythm player. Yeah. And Chris swapped onto bass. It was all very brave, I thought, of Chris to go onto bass, and so they both played lead. And of course, even though they'd been friends for a long time, they were in the limelight, and there was a lot of pressure, and there was a lot. there was a lot of competition going on, underneath the scenes, behind the scenes. And of course, Jimmy could take it. Jimmy was sort of quite a tough person, quite grounded.
Yeah.
But wasn't he was much more subject to his emotions, and he couldn't handle it most of the time. So it got too much for him in the end.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite movies from the 60s is Blow Up.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just like the whole feel, the whole mood of the movie. During the song Stroll On, Jeff does his Pete Townsend impression, right?
Yeah. We did a tour. We did a tour just before that, and we knew we were going to be in the film, and they gave us a whole load of guitars that Jeff could practice on. Cheap acoustic guitars. It actually wasn't him to do that. Not in terms of a performance. He might do it in reality.
Yeah.
Not as a show. He would do that as a show like Pete Townsend. He did break his guitars a couple of times, but it was out of his temper.
Different motivations, yeah. Well, yeah, that was a nice movie, and I enjoy seeing that part. You guys playing in it. I like to watch that.
And I thought it was unusual. It was an unusual film. Some people love it. There's a lot of sort of cultish people that love it. It's a cult movie,
Cult movie. Another one that I like was Bunny Lake is Missing. You remember that movie?
I did see that. That was a very odd film, wasn't it?
Yeah, with the zombies. The
zombies
were
in that.
Yeah, that's another cult movie.
Well,
yeah.
I saw the film, but I don't remember the zombies. What did they do in it?
What song did they do in that? I can look that up. I can edit this out. That's what I think at that time period. That's what was have kind of a not avant-garde movie, but kind of a detective thriller type movie, and then have a band play a song in it. Have a popular band play a song.
It was a sort of creepy film, wasn't it? If I remember.
Yes, it was. It looks like Nothing's Changed was the song. Which wasn't one of their big.
Not a well-known.
Yeah, not a well-known. Yeah. And then they did like the theme from the movie and things like that, Yeah. Well, I want to hear about this. This is probably the reason that you agreed to do this. You guys joining Dick Clark's Caravan of Stars tour in the U.S. and you joined up in Texas.
Yes, we did.
Whereabouts? Do you remember?
I don't know. Was Albuquerque in Texas?
That's New Mexico. Albuquerque.
Oh, okay. Not that then. Albuquerque is one of the stops. Oh, I don't remember where the. Do you know where it was?
No.
Are you trying to? Are you trying to?
Stump you. I'm trying to stump you. I wonder if it was Houston. Was Houston one of the stops?
Yeah, it could well be. It could well. It's probably on. It's probably on the net somewhere.
It might be on the net. Okay. Well, somewhere in Texas. Let's just go with that. What happened on that caravan? What happened to Jeff?
Well, he only did one gig, wherever it was. I thought it was at Albuquerque. I should really know. I should really know, but he'd been ill. He got very stressed, and he'd been ill, and strangely enough, he had suspected meningitis,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
and what he died of. But I guess it wasn't meningitis. He was just stressed. Now, perhaps he had a tendency for meningitis. I'm not sure, but he was very stressed, and he'd met this sort of Hollywood starlet in California that he fell for in a big way, and he was on this tour, and it was obviously it was like all these bands on a Greyhound bus, you know, and the bands were playing completely different style to us, because
Right.
there was Gary Lewis and the Playboys, there was Sam the Sham, Brian Hyland, you know, there was a band called the Distant Cousins. I don't know what they.
Yes, right.
They became
Yeah.
famous afterwards. Something about 20 years later. But they Bobby Hebb, he was on.
Yes, Bobby Hebb.
Bobby
Yeah.
Hebb, and it was all completely different. They had no other sort of really rock or blues groups on, so we were completely out of our place, you know. And it was hard work, and Jeff couldn't take it, and he lost his rag, and he lost his temper, and he just disappeared. He just went off, and I don't know. He ended up with this girlfriend in Hollywood.
Oh, okay. That's
And
that's
so we did this whole tour, which was very grueling. And went and because we were okay as a four piece, we could get by. We could still play all the stuff. You know, we still had a good lineup, and it sort of worked. You know, and it was much more relaxed and much more together, and we didn't have any ups and downs going on. Because you never really knew with Jeff what was going to happen. You didn't know if he was going to lose his rag on stage, or if he didn't like the sound, he would lose his temper, and he might storm off or kick the amplifiers off the stage or something mad, you know.
Yeah.
So it was with Jimmy. It was very, you know, it sort of worked, and it worked like that for a couple of years.
Yeah. Much more even tempered, more
Yeah.
even tempered. Yeah.
Yes, and it worked well, but the problem was, of course, we didn't have that sort of inspirational chemistry. You know, we didn't. There was no real creativity going on, like there was before, because Paul and myself and Keith, you know, we used to have lots of ideas of songs, and you know, Jeff was very creative too, and you know, we came up with all these great songs during that lineup.
Yeah.
With Jimmy, there wasn't any, you know, we didn't really come up with very much that was interesting, and it was difficult to keep up the standard for trying to have a hit record, you know.
Right.
And we went to Mickey Most, and Mickey had no idea of what he was doing with us, and we did some terrible records.
I was going to say that was a strange pairing, Mickey Most and the Yardbirds. I thought that was when I read that.
Well, you know, I could see it on paper, because Mickey was the real hit maker of the time, and whatever he recorded was a hit, you know, and we needed a hit.
Yeah.
We needed another hit, but they were wrong, you know. They were Little Games wasn't too bad, but you know,
It didn't
Good,
big
good
hit
night,
on it.
good night, Sweet Josephine, and then we did that other song that Manfred Mann, you know, Ha Ha said the clown.
Yeah.
Manfred Mann already done that one, and it was terrible. There were some terrible records.
Well, the Epic Records did release the greatest hits album in the U.S. and
Yes,
that became the best-selling U.S. release from the band. Yeah, so
yes,
that did well. That helped turn a lot of people on to the Yardbirds.
yes.
Yeah, and you mentioned the little games. It kind of sunk without a trace.
Yeah, but it wasn't so bad. I mean, it's not such a bad song, but it's not really. I don't know, not really up to the standard of Shapes of Things and
Yeah,
that happened 10 years time ago. You know,
yeah,
that those two were classics. I thought really with the two, you know, with Jeff.
yeah, yeah. Well, you guys stayed on the road playing live, touring the U.S. again, but I guess the writing was already on the wall. Jimmy was going in a heavy direction that would one day come to fruition with Led Zeppelin, and you and Keith wanted off the Yardbird merry-go-round and do
Yeah,
something more folk and classically oriented.
yes, it was interesting for us to do something different, and
Yeah,
we'd been listening to other, you know, lots of Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Dylan, you know, people and Fair Book Convention, people that were doing different styles of music. And we got a bit fed up with playing the same repertoire, you know, over and over again.
right. So you and Keith started the band together.
Yes.
Did you release anything? Any product?
Yeah, we still had we were still under contract with EMI.
Okay.
So we said, oh, we can still do some records. We did some records in Abbey Road, a couple of releases in Abbey Road that didn't really do anything, but they were out. And then we met like a manager who said, "Oh, the best idea is to have a band that plays live gigs, you know." And so we formed Renaissance, and they used to come around my house, and we had all the gear set up. You know, we used to play every day, working on. We called it the set, you know, or we're doing hours of music without stopping.
Yeah. I have to when I first saw that years ago when I found out that you had moved from Yardbirds to Renaissance, I thought, wow, now that's a different shift in gears right there, you know.
Yeah.
But you had always had an affinity kind of for the folk and classic music.
Well, we liked all sorts of stuff, you know, and we listened to a lot of different stuff, and there's a lot of lovely music, you know, going on that we were interested in, and we liked it all.
Right, right. Well, it was you, Keith's sister Jane on
Yes,
vocals, and then you brought in John Hawken on keyboards. I've always
yeah,
enjoyed his work with Straubs. Straubs are one of my favorite
yeah.
bands.
John
Yeah,
is a very, very talented pianist.
and you guys kind of wanted to move in a more progressive direction too.
Well, it was a bit of an accident because we were playing some ideas, and John, he was we only knew him as from the Nashville Teens. He was like Jerry Lee Lewis type player, you know, a rock and roll pianist. And then during the song, he started to play some classical stuff, some Beethoven. And we said, "Oh, that's really interesting. That sort of goes with the song, you know. That keep that in, you know." It was just an accident, but of course it was great, and we did it a few times, and that became the sort of the code of the band in a way.
Yeah.
You know, that was the thing with it became like a prog band playing a bit of classical here and there.
Right, right. Well, I'm for one am glad that you went in that direction because it's some fine material. The first two albums, I have a copy of the second one, Illusion, which
Yeah.
which later on you would form a band called Illusion.
Yes, that's right. And that was big. But we all left, and then Renaissance got taken over by other people.
Yeah,
So we couldn't use that name, you know.
yeah,
We couldn't reform as Renaissance because they were already going.
right. You could use that name.
But,
Well, off of that,
they did very well, you know, because I thought Annie was a great singer, and it was a great band with her, and they had some great lineups, you know.
yeah, yeah, they did. I have several of their best of and several albums, but really good. You're right. I enjoy their music. But off of
Yeah.
that, the second album, Illusion, the one that I do have, I like Keith's Love Goes On.
Oh
Uh,
yes,
it's very
yes.
light and kind of summery. It's got like a summery feel to
I
it.
know it's pretty odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
He come up with some lovely ideas like that.
And you would be hard pressed to know that he was the singer from Yardbirds from hearing his vocals on that
I know.
and how he belted out in in the Yardbirds, showed a
Yeah,
difference. Yeah.
he had to. I used to spend a lot of time with him, and he was very good at recording techniques, and he had old ferrograph tape machines and things, Revoxes and things, and they were all set for echo. It's really,
Yeah.
in-house echo and stuff, and it was really funny. He loved to do all that stuff, and he liked all sorts of music. He was a great guy.
It shows. It shows. Another track off of that one, Golden Thread.
Oh yeah,
Remember that one? That
yeah,
reminds me of Procol Harum. What Procol Harum was kind of.
yes, it was, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That classically
yeah,
inclined.
classical
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. But my favorite, and this is one of yours. My favorite is Face of Yesterday.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that
just
song is, yeah, that's quite popular. Yes,
is
it was
it?
a nice. No.
Yeah, yeah. It's very beautiful, beautiful track. Yeah, Face of Yesterday.
Yeah, I think Annie Haslam was talking about it. I think she said she was going to do it, but I don't think she ever did.
You ever did it? I don't believe so. I don't think it resurfaced. Um,
Yeah,
well, after Renaissance, or maybe while you were in Renaissance, you began to write songs and sing, learn some piano, and picked up the guitar.
yes. When Keith died,
Mhm.
uh, I thought, well, I'll step in and I'll sing. I'll do his part, and we'll get another drummer in, and I quite enjoyed that. I doing that acoustic singer songwriter type of role. I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah,
That style. I had a lot of fun in that group. We did some good songs in that group. I thought it was a bit more poppy.
yeah. Are you talking about Shoot? Shoot?
No,
Oh, okay, okay.
oh,
Right.
shoot came after. Yeah, shoot. Yeah.
73. I do have a copy of On the Frontier. I have that
Oh, great.
on on CD. Yeah, it's like I followed your career. I followed you around.
Yeah, yeah.
um, I like from that album. I like Ships and Sails. It has that great guitar riff
Oh
on that.
yes, yes. I thought it was great what he played. He got a real feel on the guitar on that.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
and the instrumental. Go ahead. Did you have something else you were going to say?
No, 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 no. Go on.
All right. That instrumental Head Underwater with the sitar. Um,
Yes,
I wish it was longer. It's one of those songs I wish it was a little bit longer, but that's a nice track. It's nice.
Yes. The song that stuck was the what was it called? Sepia Sister.
Sepia Sister. That's another one. That's my favorite. Actually,
Yeah,
that's that. Okay.
it got a lot of play on, and I remember a few years ago I did
Yeah.
a solo show, just a one-off solo show, and for some friends in the Midwest, and I did a lot of my own things, and I did that song, and we had it all worked out, it sounded great.
Well, it's got some nice harmonies. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the band America.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we liked all that, Seals and Crofts
Yeah. Yeah.
and all those sort of bands, Buffalo Springfield, and yeah, we liked that style. It's much more an American style, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess they call it today Americana or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 But yeah, that's a few good tracks on that, on the Frontier.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, what was that? Just kind of a one-off, or what? There wasn't any desire to make another album or anything after that.
Uh, I think we had ideas for another album, but there was, it didn't really. It wasn't a great success. That's the thing. On the Frontier
Right.
didn't really sell that many. But then people like it now. People
Yeah.
like you. A
Yeah.
lot of people. A lot of people like to buy the vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it goes for a pretty penny. Uh,
Yes.
well, well, you did mention earlier about Keith, that tragic freak accident, electrical accident
Yeah. Yes.
at
Yes.
home.
Yes.
What happened?
He was going through sort of a bit of a bad time because he was split up with his wife, and his wife's having problems um, with various things, and so he was actually in custody of his two sons. So it was quite difficult. It was quite difficult for him, and he was always messing around with something or other. And I think when he plugged he plugged the guitar or whatever it was, the Moog synthesizer into the wall. He didn't have a proper plug, so
Oh,
he just put sort of matchsticks in to hold it in the wall, and this is all I know. And he was playing the guitar through the synthesizer, very early Moog,
yeah.
and he got a shock, and he couldn't take it. That's all I know about it, really.
Wow. Wow.
But it was rather weird,
Yeah. Yes.
rather
Yes.
free.
Yes. Yes, it was. Well, didn't he have a weak heart as well? Did I read that, Keith?
Well, he only had one lung.
Okay, that's it. That was it.
No, his heart was okay. He had to have a lung removed one time in the early time of the group.
Okay. Okay. That's what it was. Okay. Well, you guys did in 1977 what I mentioned earlier about the surviving original members of Renaissance formed Illusion, and you guys had a couple of albums out.
Yeah.
What was the public's response or the critics?
Well, yes, it got well received. It seemed to do well in the Midwest for some reason.
Huh,
It,
interesting.
it got played in the Midwest, because you have different DJs, and you could get these things played on the radio in those days. And we did a couple of tours with various people like Brian Ferry, you know, in England, and they went quite well. And but it was never a real big time, and they were always expecting our second album was going to, you know, really make it for us. But it coincided with all the punk thing coming in.
Right.
It was in the late 70s, and there was the Sex Pistols, you know, the Stranglers, and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And people were wanting, were wanting that kind of music. It's the style was out, of the harmonies and the classical and the folk type music. It was on its way.
We were like dinosaurs that,
right.
You know, we were like the dinosaurs of rock then. Right. And we weren't big. We weren't really big enough or important enough to hold up to it. So we got dropped actually by the record company.
Okay, what happened? Well, Ruthless Blues Band. Who all made up that band?
Oh, well, it was just that with John Knightsbridge. He was the guitar player with Illusion.
Okay.
And he had this sort of bluesy band, and I played with them sometimes. It was like just playing old blues covers, you know. It was fun. It was like a fun thing. It was, to me, it was like almost like semi-professional. You know, there was no. I wasn't trying to make big money out of it or anything. It was just good fun.
Not a career move. No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, talk some about in the '80s, Box of Frogs, the kind of reunion of the Yardbird alumni.
Yeah, that was a reunion because we used to, you know, Chris and Paul and I used to hang out quite a bit. We never really lost touch with each other, and we had to. We did one gig in I think it was 1982. Some did to do. It was the birthday of the Marquee, and they wanted the Yardbirds to reform to play there.
Okay.
In the Marquee Club, which was in Wardour Street. And so we sort of got a band together to play there. And actually, John Knightsbridge played guitar. And we had a harmonica player called Mark Felton, who played with 9 Below Zero. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was a good band, and we did we had a couple of nights, and we did all the songs, and then we thought, oh, this is good. We've got a few ideas. Let's what about if we do an album together? You know, we'll ask Jeff to come and guest on it, and we'll get some other guests, you know, Rory and people. So that was good fun.
Yeah.
But it was never a live band. It was just recording.
Studio band, yeah.
I didn't really want to go out on the road, you know, and do that.
Yeah. Well, who came up with the name Box of Frogs? I have to ask you that.
It was one of the guys in Island Records, I think.
Okay.
And the A&R man.
Okay.
He said, "Oh, why don't you call it?" He said, "Box of Frogs," because it's a saying, you know. Oh, you're very ugly. You've got a face like a box of frogs or something.
Okay. Funny. Well, how did you and Dave Thompson get together originally?
Well, I was approached by somebody on Facebook actually, because lots of people used to say, "Oh, why don't you do a book?"
Yeah.
And this guy was a writer, and he'd done some other projects, and he was from near San Francisco. He He lived in California,
Okay.
and so he said, "Why don't we start doing a book?" So he actually came over to France, and we met up, and we got on really well. And we did he did quite a lot of work, this guy. But what happened, it didn't really, it didn't really flow. It wasn't really that interesting to read. He didn't really have the style that was necessary.
Oh, okay.
I tried to get it through various publishers, and I had a conversation with a publishing agent, and the agent said, "Oh, I've read the book, and it's really not very well written.
Hmm.
Why don't you work with someone like Dave Thompson? Because Dave was a great writer." And so he suggested it, and I got in touch with Dave, and Dave sort of more or less took the whole book over and wrote it his way, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah. Well, it was nice to be able to collaborate with someone like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's sorry, it's quite a lot of work because you're working. It's almost like he's doing it like you are.
Yeah.
Doing an interview. It was before Zoom.
Right.
No, I don't even know what Dave looks like, really. I've spoken so much on the phone. Zoom.
Yeah.
Asked me all these things, and we got on very well. And then when the second book came about after, because I'd lost my wife to cancer, and I was going through a really bad time, and I decided to look into communicating with her, after she'd passed on. And I did a lot of studies, and I looked at near-death experiences, and I did a lot of sort of mediumship classes and all this, and I managed to communicate with my wife, and I thought, well, this is amazing. This is so incredible, that I could do this, and that life actually goes on, although I can't see her or anything.
Right.
And so one day I thought, someone suggested, why don't you do at least a blog about it, or maybe a book? Mm-hmm. And one day I heard from Dave. He just wrote an email out of the blue. "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, hold on, Dave. I have to call you to talk about this idea." So I thought he's not going to be interested in this. This is too woo-woo, I told him all about the idea, and he said, "Oh yes, I love that idea. I love anything about ghosts and all that paranormal." And so we did the other book as well, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing
that. Okay. Well, where did the Nobody Told Me? Where did that idea come from? For the title, Nobody.
It was just a bit of a joke, because we used to have a joke whereby we used to go for a show somewhere, and we used to go to the stage door and knock on the door, and the man used to come to the door, and we used to say, "Well, we're playing here tonight, and we need to bring in the equipment," and the guy would quite often, he would say, "Oh, nobody told me." This is a standard joke, that people say, "Oh, nobody told me about that." So it was a bit of an in joke.
Yeah.
And I thought also with my sort of autobiography, I had no idea what my life was going to be, or what I'd be doing when I was a kid. So nobody really told me what was how it was going to be.
Right. I get that. I get that. You know?
It's like a double pointed thing.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe more bands back in the day should have tried that approach. Don't have a place booked, but just take all your equipment there and go up and say, "We're playing here tonight." And then maybe you get to play. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Just talk the doorman into it.
That's really funny.
Yeah, try that. Of course, it would be a lot of heavy lifting and all that stuff, carrying your equipment. Well,
yeah, it's a bit of a standard attitude, for an English workman. A lot of people say that sort of thing,
nobody told me.
Trying
Yeah,
to get a job.
yeah. Oh well, if you say so, come on in. Yeah, it's like, well, let's go back a little bit to the 1992, when you guys, the Yardbirds, were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Uh, had you guys been expecting that, or was it a surprise? Or
Well, I think we'd been nominated already,
okay,
and we were voted in.
okay,
I think the year before we somebody nominated us,
okay,
and we didn't get the vote. And then the next year we got in. It was great. It was really nice.
yeah,
It's so nice to be honored in that way.
right. I was gonna say, and from your peers and the fans and everyone, yeah. So everybody was there. Everybody was there for the.
Yes, and it was a great honor because we were inducted, with Jimi Hendrix at the same time, Booker T and the MGs, and Johnny Cash, and we used to play Johnny's songs at school. So that was amazing. How exciting!
That must have been kind of a full circle thing. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Think about that. Yeah. Well, was the induction what prompted you and Chris to assemble the Reformed Yardbirds after that?
well, I think it did eventually give us some confidence, thinking that that the Yardbirds are still well known and still very 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 popular. That there's a lot of loyal followers
Yeah,
that still remember the band, and they'd be interested. And so we just gave it a try.
yeah, yeah. And you guys had played various lineups up until Chris uh, left, and then it's just you, the original.
Yes,
You're the only original. Wow.
yes. Well, Top came in for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Topham played for a bit, but he didn't really. I don't know. It didn't really suit him. It wasn't really him.
Yeah.
And then I'm just seeing how it goes. It's all an American band. They're very good musicians, but one of the guys now has moved to Austin.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
That's far from you.
Far. Wow. Okay. Oh, that is really cool. Well, you guys, how do you get together? Do they fly over there? Do you come over here, or
Well,
what?
I always come over there, and then we do some rehearsal before each tour.
Okay.
I stay with Godfrey Townsend. He's the guitar player, and he lives in New York.
Okay.
So I usually stay with him, and we rehearse around his house. So it's nice. And they're all very good players, and they're all real Yardbirds fans.
Yeah. Yeah, that helps, doesn't it, to be a fan, right? To
Yeah,
be in a
they
fan.
know backwards.
Well, what do you see as any difference between the fans over there and the fans in America? You know,
Well, historically speaking, I think the American fans let themselves go a lot more, than the English. The English seem to be much more reserved, but maybe now there's not a lot of difference.
yeah, it yeah, it seems like that's the case. They're becoming more and more uniform, kind of in across the board, across the world. Well, it's becoming one world kind of thing
Well,
anyway.
yeah, true, but I'll just have to see how it goes because it's sorry, I'm getting older and older, and so becomes more and more hard work.
Right, right, right. Well, you will let me know. Do you know if you do play some gigs or shows, any down here in Texas? Do you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Do drop me a line or message me, or I guess I can follow on your Facebook too.
Yes, I think there is a venue. Is it called the Granada or something?
Oh, the Granada. That's here in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah, we did play
Okay. All right.
not not that long ago,
Okay.
maybe
Well,
5 years.
okay. Well, if you do play again here, you know that would be nice. I'd definitely like to go and check it out. You know.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. I'll keep in touch.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All righty. Well, anything else in closing, Jim? You'd like to add, or any you'd like?
Um, well, no. I've done lots of different work, and I've enjoyed doing the solo work, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I might do more solo stuff, but it takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work, and sometimes there's not so much interest. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And also it's difficult now because it's all downloading, so
Right.
it's not like selling old records. It's strange. It's different.
It's very different. It's very different. I mean, the technology is wonderful. And you can have your own home studio, but as far as making any money out of it, yeah, with the downloading,
Yes.
it's not worth it a lot of times.
Yeah, so that I'm sure there are ways to capitalize, but I don't know what they are at the moment.
Right. You're in the same boat with many other musicians, I tell you. Same boat. Yeah, unless you're a huge megastar or something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah. All righty. Well, yeah, do
okay. Well,
keep in.
sorry again for being late, but it
No,
always.
yeah, not a problem, not a problem, Jim. We got together. And thank you again for your time and all the best to you. And let's try to keep in touch.
Okay, Greg.
And I will shoot you over a link of the interview. All righty. Well, you have a good rest of the weekend, Jim. And
Yeah, you have a night because it's early day now, isn't it? What is it? Midday or
yeah,
something?
yeah, it's almost noon. It's like 10 minutes till noon, something like that. So,
Have a nice noon.
yes, yes. And you have a nice evening, okay? All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, bye.